Good day, guys. Welcome to STEM Lesson 2. Before we get started, I'd first of all just like to thank everyone who tuned in to the Zoom session today. It was really awesome to feel like we actually had a group again, which was nice. And it was even more awesome to see all of the designs and hear you talk about the designs and the 3D models that you created. Uh, I loved how every single design that we looked at or that you shared was different from someone else in the class. So that's the beauty of Tinkercad is a lot of it's from your imagination. So it was awesome to see that none of the designs were the same. They were all really different. We saw spikes, we saw hover cars, we saw SWAT cars, we saw a whole bunch of really cool designs, and not one of them was the same. So it's really awesome to see you guys using your imagination to create these models. And that's what it's all about. Just having a play around with Tinkercad, having a tinker, I guess, and you know, seeing what you can create. That brings us to lesson two. So today, if you actually haven't completed lesson one, make sure you go back and do that now because the skills that I'll be teaching today will be a little bit different from lesson one, and you need that basic understanding of the skills taught in lesson one for today's lesson. So if you haven't completed lesson one, close the video now, go back and do lesson one, and then you can come back and watch this video. If you have completed lesson one and you're watching this video, awesome. We're ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I will switch my camera over now from me, and I'll share my screen, and we can get started. So I'm looking forward to seeing your robot creations next Wednesday. Okay, so the task of today's lesson is to design and 3D model a robot that can perform a certain job or can complete a specific task. So if you look at the screen here, I've sketched up my robot, and this is a really, really important step. So today, before you even get into using the computer Tinkercad, I would suggest getting a pencil and a piece of paper and sketch your design first. Have an idea of the kind of robot you're going to create, and also have an idea of how you're going to create it. So when you do your sketch, I would suggest keeping it simple. Okay, it's a sketch, it doesn't need to be perfect. You want to keep it simple so that when you use it, when you're using it, you can, you know, match the shapes up. We know Tinkercad, you use simple shapes to build a more complex shape. So if you look at my sketch here, I have used a whole bunch of simple shapes um, to create my robot. So I have some rectangles here. I have some more rectangles that I've used here. This I think will be a cylinder shape. I've used some squares up here, which in the program will actually be cubes, but it's 2D, so they're squares and rectangles at the moment. I've used a tube. I know that I've used a tube before in Tinkercad, so I'll be using that. I have some more tubes that I think I'll use for the hands. I'm not sure what I'll use for this propeller yet, but I'll find something in Tinkercad to use. So this is my basic design, and before I actually started drawing it, I thought about the task that my robot would be able to perform. So my robot is called the SLSA robot, and it's a surf life-saving robot, and its job is to help the lifesavers with rescues. So if you notice, I've included a few things to help my robot complete the task. So this here is a rescue tube. Um, so this will be used to help people who are in need in the surf. Up here is a propeller. Now, my robot is electrical, so it's not going to be going in the water. What it can do is fly above the water, the ocean, and drop down um, a tube to people below who need help. This little thing here is a GPS tracker, so my robot can, knows where it is. And here is a screen which can display surf conditions. It can display weather warnings and things for the lifesavers to help them with their job. So this is my robot, and this is the first step that you need to do in this lesson is you need to think of a task that your robot's going to create, and I want you to sketch it on paper first. Okay, it will help you a lot throughout your design process. Make sure it's there on your paper. architects, engineers, designers, before they start using um, computer aided design, they'll always sketch it on paper first. So it's a great habit to get into. So make sure you start off with a sketch today. Okay. All right. So I have my sketch in front of me. I know what I'm doing. I know my plan. So I can get started now. Now, the very, very first thing that we need to do, same as last week, and I noticed not everyone did this step last week. So make sure you get into the habit of doing this. Is renaming your document. Okay. So I'm going to call mine the S Surf Life Saving Australia robot. Okay, that's my name for my robot. Yours will obviously be different. So I've named my document now, and I'm ready to begin. So I can see on my sketch that the first kind of shape that I need, well, I need to create my robot legs first, and I'm going to use a box for that. So I'll drop my box in there, drag, drop my box in. I can see that it's too big, so I will hold my shift button down and click this square, and I'll drag that in so I keep the shape but just make it a little bit smaller. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It is a little bit short, I think, so I will drag this up, which will change this dimension and make the little leg a bit taller. Okay, all right, so I'm happy with that. Now, for my robot, I did. It was a bit hard to see in the sketch, but I have some triangular shapes for the feet. I didn't want it just to be a chunky block foot. I wanted to have a little triangle at the front. So I could use a roof shape for that, but I want more of a right angle, so I will drag and drop a wedge in. And straight away you can see that that is much too big. So what I need to do is, again, hold shift down, click this little square, and I'll drag it so it's a little bit smaller. Okay, that's almost, I think, the right size. Now we can see it's facing the wrong way, so I'll click my rotate arrow and, oops, sorry, and I will rotate it. Now I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees, so it is directly, it's turned around directly. Now you'll notice you can also hold shift to help with this. So if I say I'm trying to get it to 180 degrees, but it's being fiddly, if I hold shift, it will snap to 180 degrees. If I go this way, it will snap to 90, 0, and so on. So I want it to be 180, so I'll hold shift and let go. Okay, now I've got my shape there. I'll use my arrow keys to move it and join it to my foot. Now, okay, there's a problem. It's not quite lined up. Now I could just use my arrows and line it up, but we want to learn how to use the align tool. So if you have a look here, I'm going to explain it. So what I'll do here is I'll hold my shift button down and I'll click both my objects that I want to align. So now they're both selected. You could also drag and highlight them, both selected. Now I'll come up here to the align button and I'll click the align button, and you'll notice when I click this there's a whole bunch of little um, points that come up. Now this here is my middle, so if I want to align this shape with the middle of this shape, I can click this here, and what it will do, it will snap them together so that they're perfectly aligned. And now you can see that the foot or the leg of my robot is aligned perfectly. So that's the align tool, and we'll use it a little bit more today, but that's the basis for the align tool. Okay, so I've got my one leg here. Now I was just having a look at it, and I thought, okay, it's a bit short, so and a bit too chunky for my liking. So what I'll do is I'll click on this shape here, and I'm just going to make it, drag it in so it's a little bit thinner, and then I will drag this one up because I want it to be a little bit taller. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now what we're going to look at now is the group tool. So I've got my foot here and I'm happy with that. I don't want to change this at all. So what I want to combine it to one object. So what I'll do is I'll select both of these objects here by holding shift and clicking. So now they're both selected. You can also select them by dragging a box around them. Once they're selected, I can go up to my group button up here and push my group button, and what that does is it will make it one object. So it's no longer two objects, it's one solid object. So that is the group tool. I would like, I hope Jack doesn't mind in year 6, but I was looking at his awesome vehicle creation. He's made the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo. Absolutely love it. Really creative. But there was one thing that I noticed here, and I want to show you how the group tool can actually fix this here. So if you look at Jack's awesome van here, you'll notice that you can actually see where he's used the rectangle to join in into his other shape. Now, if he was to select that rectangle and the body of his truck and click the group tool, you'll see what happens. It actually combines the two shapes, so it's no longer two separate shapes, but it's one shape. So a bonus, you all get to see Jack's awesome design. So thanks, Jack. I hope you didn't mind me sharing that with everyone. But that's just an example of how you can actually see it, improving your design. So let's head over back to our one. And now I've got my robot leg here. Now I know my robot from my sketch has two legs. Yours might not, but mine does. So I want to make another leg. Now, I could go ahead and drop a box and make it all again, but that would take a very long time and it would be hard to get it exact. So what I am going to do is use the duplicate tool. So I'll click on my object here and I'll click my duplicate tool here. Now we looked at this last week, so I've duplicated it, and remember, when you duplicate it, it 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 copies, but it sits on top of the old object. So I'll use my arrow keys now, move them across. I think that's a pretty good distance there. I'm happy with that. I'm going to click off it, and now I have my two robot legs. Now, I don't want to separate, I want these to stay, actually, I want these to stay at that distance apart. So I can now actually highlight these and group these together. So I have my 2 feet and I'm ready to add in the body of my robot. So I'll quickly go back to my sketch, and I can see that the body of my robot uh, will be a box. So I go back to Tinkercad, I will drag a box in and I'll drop it onto the blue work plane. Now you can see that straight away it's not the right size, so I'll resize that. I think I might make it a little bit taller. I'll use the black cubes just to change the front dimension and make it a bit thinner. So I've got my body there. I'm happy with that. Now I know I need to place this body on top of my feet. So last week we used the cone tool to do this. This week I want to show you the work plane tool. So if I was to use the cone tool, I would have to move it up like that, and then I would have to use my arrows and position it above my feet. Go back, and you can see that it's not aligned with the top of my feet yet, so I would have to drag it down until it's perfect, and there we go. Now it is on top of my feet. Now that's one way to do it, and if you find that easier, you can use the cone tool, but I do want to show you the work plane tool because it saves you having to, you know, get it perfect. So what I'll do is I'll go back, I'll undo everything and go back to my box being placed here. Now, I will click up here to the work plane tool. So, or you can click W on your keyboard and it will select the work plane tool. You'll notice that once that's selected, around the mouse is a square. Now this square, it's a sticky square and it will snap to the surface of your objects where your mouse is. So if you notice here, my mouse is on the front of my feet and it's snapped to that. If I move it to the side, it will snap to the side. Now I know that I want to place this box on top of my feet. So what I can do here is I can create a new work plane by clicking the top of my feet, and you'll see an orange work plane has been created. Now this work plane means that any object that I add will be on top of these feet. Now, I already have my box here, so there's a little thing that you can do, and it's using the D button on your keyboard. So if I press the D button, what it's going to do is drop this box, or in this case, lift this box up and place it on my new work plane. So I'm going to press D and you'll see what happens, and it's up on top. Now this now is perfectly in line with the top of my feet. So now what I can do is use my arrow keys and position it. Need to change that a little bit, position it above my feet, and you'll see now it is perfectly above my feet. And it just saves me having to, you know, um, try and get this exact. Now, if I was to, for some reason, move my body up there, if I press D again, it's going to drop it straight back down onto this work plane. To get rid of the work plane and go back to your original work plane, you click the tool again and then you select the bottom work plane, so the blue work plane. And now you'll see that my body is perfectly, zoom in, perfectly on top of my feet. Now I can add my head. Now the way I'm going to do this is by using the work plane tool again. I know the head needs to go on top of the body, so I will select my work plane. I will place it on top of the body, and it will create the new orange work plane. So now I can drag and drop the box across for my head and place it on top, and it will be perfectly sitting on top of the body. Now I think that's a little bit big, so I'm going to hold shift and use the white square to proportionally shrink my head. And there we go. So you'll notice that it isn't, actually I can get rid of my work plane now. So I click work plane again, click the bottom. Now I need to get my head to be in the center of my body. You can click it and use the arrow keys if that's what you would like to do, or you can use the align tool again. So I hold shift, I click the body, I go to my align tool, and I know that this marker here is in the center. So if I click this marker here, it will snap the head across to the center. Now it is perfectly centered and aligned. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the placement of my head. However, now looking at it, I feel like the body and the feet are just a little bit too big. So what I'll do here is I want to resize them both so that they shrink together. So what I'll do is I'll click the body, I'll hold shift down so I also select the feet, and now that they're both selected, I can actually resize them together. So I'll use this white square here, I'll hold shift so that it shrinks in scale, in proportion. So what I'll do is I'll shrink it down a little bit like this, and I think that there is a good size for my body. You'll notice that the feet and the body shrink together now because they're both selected. So I'll leave it there. However, now the head is floating again. So I'll go back to my work plane tool. I will click the top of my body. I will then click the head and press D. And there we go. I'll click off my work plane tool. And there we go. We've got the head and the body together now. Okay, we are ready to put some arms on this robot. So we'll use the work plane tool again. Select the work plane tool. Now we need the arms to come off the side of the robot, so we're going to select this side of the robot. You'll notice when I do this that the work plane is now vertical. Okay, it's no longer horizontal, it's vertical. So we can go ahead, actually we'll go back and have a quick look at my design. And we can see that I need to add a box for the shoulder. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll drag a box across, and when I place it there, it will be exactly in line with the side of the robot. Now what we need to do is we need to shrink this because it is way too big. So I'm going to hold shift down and shrink this proportionally. Now, because the work plane is vertical, some of the controls have switched around, so you just have to have a play around with it. You might make a couple of mistakes, that's alright. You've got the undo button. So now I can click this and I need to position it. Using my arrow keys, I'm going to move it up. Okay, and I can see that, alright, that's still sticking out a bit too far, so I'll shrink that in and I will bring it up a little bit as well. Okay, there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I can get out of this work plane view and I can change it a little bit. I'm going to stretch it out a bit like that. And there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I can add my arm to the shoulder. So in my, I think I'm going to use a cylinder shape for my arm. So I'll drag that across and drop it there. Now it's too big again. So what I'll actually, first I'm going to make it a little bit longer. Okay. Then I'll shrink it by using my shift key to shrink it all at once. And there we go. I might make it a little bit bigger. Oops, thinner. There we go. So I've got that there. Now what I want to do is bring it up so I know I can use my cone tool, and then I can use my arrows on my keyboard to position it where I want it to go. So there we go. I have an arm. I might bring that actually out a bit more. There we go. I've got my robot arm. And I can see here it's actually not centered. So what I'll do is I can use my align tool again. So I'll click the shoulder blade, I'll hold shift, click my arm, I'll I'll go to my align tool, and then I can click this middle one again, and there we go. It's nice and centered. Okay, let's add a hand to this arm. So for my hand, I will be using the tube object. So I'll drag this across, place it there, and you can see when I place it there that the drop down menu pops up. Now there's some settings that you can change on different objects. For this object, it's a bit too thin for me, so I'm going to change the wall thickness of my hand, make it a little bit thicker. There's some other things you can change. You can create a beveled edge on it. You can create sides, so you can make it more of a polygon, but I'll leave it as round for now. And I like that thickness, so that's good. Now, it's way too big at the moment, so I'll hold my shift button down and resize it. Okay, so there we go. Now, it's not the right way up, so I need to rotate, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So I can hold shift to snap it to 90 degrees, and there we go. Now I need to move it and connect it to my robot, so I can use my arrow keys, and then I can use my cone tool to drag it up, and need to move it back. Okay, there we go. I might move it up a little bit more, and there we go. We have one hand on our robot. Okay, so I need the arm on the other side. So what I can do here is I can use my duplicate tool. So I want to, for now, I want to move my whole arm across to the other side. So I want to select my arm component. So I got my shoulder, so I can hold shift down, select the shoulder, the arm, and the hand, and then I can click the duplicate button. And now that's copied, I can use my arrow keys to move that across so that it is on the other side of my robot. Okay, so that's there now. Now I don't need this. Oops, undo that. Let's click off. So I don't need this hand there at the moment. I'll work on my arm. So the arm on this side is actually sticking out to the side so that it can be holding the tube. So what I'll do here is I'll move this out so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to rotate holding shift and rotate my arm 90 degrees. So now it is sticking out to the side. I'll use my cone tool to lift it up, and then I can use my arrow keys to bring it back into the side of my body. I might move this up just a fraction more. Okay, there we go. So now I need to position my hand. So I select my hand, use my arrow keys to position this. Okay, there we go. And I'll use that to go up, my cone tool, go back a little bit. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that placement. Now, my robot is holding a tube. So what I want to do here is actually cut out a little bit of my hand so that it can hold the tube. So the way I'm going to do this is by using the hole tool. So what I'll do is I'll put a box there and I'll make it into a hole, and I'll make it really thin, and then I'll use my arrow keys to position it. And you'll see here, oops, I'll drag it up, and you'll see it's left a shadow on my object, okay, on my hand. Now that shadow is going to be what is cut out of the hand. Anything in shadow is what's going to be cut out. So to make the actual cut from last week, we learned you have to hold shift and select the thing that you're going to be cutting. So in this instance, it's the hand, and then you group them together, and then you'll have a cutout. So there we go. I've got my claw hand, and what I can do is I want these two to be an object. So I'll now shift click the arm so that they're both selected, and I can group these together so that now this arm is connected. I can move it out a little bit like that. Okay, there we go. All right, this is starting to look like a robot. So part of the robot's job is the rescue robot. So it's going to need a tube. So I had a look down here, and the torus looks pretty similar to a tube. So I'll use that shape, that object, and I can resize it by holding shift. Okay, at the moment I need to rotate it. So if I rotate it that way, hold shift, it will snap it to 90 degrees. Okay, I can lift it up using the cone tool, and then I can use my arrows to position it. Actually, it's a little bit too big, so I'll shrink it a little bit more. I can use my arrow keys to position tube where I would like it. Let's move it a bit more across, down a fraction, and there we go. My robot is now a rescue robot, so he's holding his tube. So looking at my design, I now need to add all these little details in. So I think I'll start up here with the GPS and the propeller. So the way I'm going to do that is using my work plane tool. So I know that I need to put it on top of the head. So I'll use my work plane tool. I'll select the top. And for my GPS little thing, I know this shape looks pretty similar to my drawing. So I can place that there. I can hold shift and I can round. Okay, I'll place it about there. Okay, I like that. I want it to be see-through or transparent, so I can click the color here, change it to transparent. So now I have a little GPS positioning thing on his head, and maybe I'll put a little something inside there as well. So I'll hold shift, and I can use my arrow keys. Do that, and let's check it out from this way. Go. All right. So there's his GPS. Now we need a propeller. So I know that it looks like on my sketch I need a cylinder. So let's go here. Let's add a cylinder. It's going to be really big, so let's make it small and a bit taller. Let's use our arrow keys to position it in the correct spot. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so there's that, and now I would like to add a propeller to the top of it. So let's get out of this work plane view, and something that you can have a look at. Now you've got all your basic shapes down here, but if you click here, there's actually a lot more shapes you can explore. So I'm going to go down to all shapes. If I click all shapes, there's a whole bunch, lots of pages of different shapes. So I'm going to just quickly have a look through here until I see something that looks similar to a propeller. Okay, maybe I could use that. I think I'll use this, the sunflower. So let's select that. Now it's way too big, so I'll hold shift, make it a bit smaller. Now I know that I want to put this propeller on top of my cone, so I can use my work plane tool for this by selecting my work plane and selecting the very top of my cylinder. If I click that there, I've created a new plane. Now I select my propeller. If I press D, it's going to bring it back up on level with that. Then I can use my arrow keys, move it across, position it where I would like it, forward I think. There we go. Change the color of that too. Actually, we can change the colors at the end. So there we go. Get out of this work plane view, and there we go. My robot now has a propeller. I'll actually make this a little bit, oops, a bit thicker by using this. Okay, there we go. All right, pretty happy with that. I also add a little bit of a topper to the top of that propeller. So I'll go back to my basic shapes. I know I want to use this, so click my work plane and I'll select the very top of my propeller. I can drag the paraboloid over there, resize this. Oh, zoom in. I can use my arrow keys. Center. Zoom back out and off that work plane view. And there we go. Oops, I think I might. Oops, make that down, make it a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, cool. Okay, so now I get to add some details to the front of my robot. So if I go back to my sketch, I can see I've got some squares for the eyes, square for the screen, and some buttons. So let's go ahead and try and do that now. So the way I like to do this is first of all build it on the bottom work plane, and then we can put it up onto the face afterwards. So I'll use a square from a box for my eye. Okay, zoom in a bit. I'm going to flatten that a little bit. Okay, there we go. So I've got one eye. What I can do here is duplicate and use my arrows. So I've got my two eyes there. Now what I can do is highlight those guys and group them together so that they're one object. Now I'll make the mouth. So the way I'll do this is same thing. I'll use a a box. I'll shrink it down so it's flat, and I'll make it a bit thinner. And I think I'm just going to use um, the one box for this. So I think that's a pretty good looking face. So what I'll do now that my face is there, I need to get it onto my robot's head. So the way I'll do this is I will select those and I can group them. And then what I need to do is I know I need to put it there, so I can use the work plane tool again. So I click, actually before I do that, I need to rotate my face so it's the right orientation. So the way I can do that, 90 degrees. All right, now once that's done, go to your work plane button, click the face where you want it, and now if you press D, it's going to drop it so it's directly in line with the face. It's going to be hidden there. So what you need to do as soon as you've done that, you need to get out of this work plane view so that you can use the cone tool and drag it on top of the face using my arrow keys now. Okay, so I can see that my mouth is maybe a little bit too big. So what I'll do is I'll shrink it all, that's all right. There we go. Okay, so the robot's face is now on. I'll move it down a little bit more. There we go. So my robot now has a face. Last thing that I need to add is the screen and the buttons. So I'll do that the exact same way that I did the face, and I'll use a box and I'll make my screen. So I'll flatten that down. It's a bit too big, so I'll shrink it. And I think this time I'll just put my buttons underneath. So the way I'll do this, I'll use a cylinder, sorry. I'll shrink it down, make that look like a button. I might bring it out a little bit so it sticks out. And I'll use my arrow keys to position that underneath my screen. Okay, then I can use my duplicate tool, duplicate, move across, and then if I click my duplicate tool again, this is a cool little function. If I click my duplicate tool again, it will place the next object the same distance away that I moved the other one. So see if I click it like that, there we go. I've got 3 buttons. Pretty happy with that. What I can do here is I can group them now. Now it's one object. Okay, now I need to do the same thing. I need to get it onto the body. So the way I'll do this is first I need to rotate this so it's the correct orientation, 90 degrees. Once that's done, now I can use my work plane tool and stick it onto the front of the robot here. So I click that, click my object, press D, get out of the work plane, go back to my original work plane, then I can use um, my cone tool to bring that up. And there we go. All right, the robot is pretty much complete. The only thing left to do is add some color to my model. So the way we do this, select an object, go to the drop-down menu over here, and select the color that you would like to change your object to. Now, I might change this to a darker gray. Actually, let's go this one. Now, you should be able to change objects individually. The only problem you may have is when trying to change the colors of grouped items. So we know I grouped the screen and the buttons before, and if I wanted to change these to a different color, I can't at the moment because they're grouped as one item object. So what I need to do is ungroup them. Once they're not in a group anymore, then I can select the items and individually color them. So I might do some green buttons. Let's go green, yellow, green, yellow. It is a rescue robot, so I will make his arms stand out with some bright yellow arms. Let's go yellow there. Let's make his hand yellow as well. I can make the tube. I'll make the tube orange color, I think. I'll select the pole up here and make it the same color as the body. My propeller can be black. I'll change the mouth and the eyes. Now you'll notice again these are grouped, so I have to ungroup them first. Click off, then I can change the mouth to a purple. Let's go some blue eyes, and there we go. I've colored in my design now. Okay, so the very, very last step that I would suggest doing is grouping everything together, because if I click my robot now and I wanted to move it around my work plane, it's not one object. So to make it one object, let's undo that and go back there. I'm going to select everything by dragging a box over them, over my objects, and then I will click the group tool up here. Now you'll see there is a little bit of an issue. When I do this, it changes everything back to one color. There is a way to fix this. You just have to click the color icon here and click multicolor, and it will revert it back to your colored design. So finally we have created our robot and it's here. So thank you if you've lasted this long and you're still watching the video. I know it was a long video. It's really hard to kind of get all these skills and squish them down into a shorter video. I did try. So thank you for listening. I'm really excited to see what you guys can create and looking forward to you sharing your designs with your classmates next Wednesday in our Zoom session. Remember, the purpose of this is just to have fun and explore a little bit. If you're trying to use the tools and you can't quite figure it out, that's okay. I don't want you to stress about it. Just do what you already know how to do, because I've seen your designs already and they're really cool. So you obviously have a basic understanding of how to use the program. This lesson was just to show you some other things, other tools that you can use to help you in your design process. So good luck with it all, and I'll speak to you next Wednesday. See you guys.